Hello and welcome to the presentation of Spring Valley Elementary's 3-year strategic plan, a visual presentation. The future of education is holistic and brain-based in neuroscience. Here's our agenda for the day. First, we will look at the organization's overview, mission, and vision statement. Then we will look at an overview of the neuroscience and research behind our holistic strategy. Then goals based upon SWOT analysis of our elementary school organization, our leadership development plans, the change management and evaluation plan for our holistic goals, cultural competence and inclusivity development, a year in review, a letter from the principal, and then a year in review, success and key performance indicators. Then the next 3 years, a look to our future, and our references will be at the end. Our organizational overview, mission, and vision statement. Our organization is a large suburban elementary school which serves around 500 students from pre-K to 5th grade. Our mission is to educate and empower students by inspiring a love of learning in every child, creatively differentiating education tailored to unique learning styles and needs, and holistically improving educational outcomes through brain-based neuroscience. Our vision is to become the foremost leader in holistic school reform by showing the world that meaningful brain-based improvements in micronutrients, movement, and mental health based in neuroscience can generate radically successful educational outcomes that benefit all stakeholders. Here's an overview of the neuroscience and research behind our holistic strategy. Instead of ultra-processed, sugar-saturated, dye and chemical-filled breakfast, lunch, snacks, and drinks, our students enjoy healthier, brain-based, and nutrient-dense food and drinks that positively influence cognitive function and emotional behavioral well-being. One way that these food changes work is by reducing inflammation in the brain and gut, or the second brain. Another way that this works is by helping to feed and balance the right bacteria in the gut, which positively affects behavior, mood, the immune system, reduces leaky gut syndrome, reduces attention problems, and more. For our micronutrients research, although the etiology of inflammation is complicated, it seems that diet is an important part of it, and following an inflammatory diet increases chronic inflammatory cytokines, disrupts the gut microbiota, and affects gut-brain axis, contributes to immune system dysfunction, gut permeability, and more. The dietary nutrients such as magnesium and folate directly affect the brain processes. Brain development, energy in the brain and body, gene expression, ability to focus, and stress and hyperemotionality. This is true to an even greater and more pronounced degree for any child who is experiencing neurodivergence, such as ADHD and autism. The findings suggest that certain food additives contribute to oxidative stress and other neurotoxic mechanisms, leading to cellular and molecular alterations in neural tissue, including functionally relevant brain regions. And then moving on to our movement initiative, instead of being expected to sit idle and still in a desk for 8 class periods with only one 30-minute opportunity for physical movement, this year our students enjoyed a 60-minute recess and 10 minutes of in-classroom access in every class period to stretch, fidget, have a brain break, dance, exercise, or move around as needed. Research demonstrates that physical movement is not only physically necessary, but it's also very important for the brain and cognitive functioning, as well as emotional and behavioral well-being. The participants mentioned a teacher who consistently takes 20-minute outdoor walks with the students before the day's lessons, referred to as the Maria Walkabout. The participants described this physical activity as social, invigorating, and positively impacting the students' studies. One group wrote that the Maria Walkabout, we go outdoors in the refreshing air, which makes us more energetic and our brains work better. To maximize the brain boost, teachers and students were encouraged to participate in simple movements that are based by neuroscience, such as activating both the hemispheres of the brain and corpus callosum, increasing blood flow to the brain, stimulating neurotransmitters, midline crossing movements, vestibular activations, proprioceptive and deep pressure calming, etc. According to the Eunice Kennedy Shriver National Institute of Child Health and Human Development, today's children have become increasingly inactive and unfit. with greater than 50% of children not meeting the recommended 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity. Previous research has suggested that acute aerobic exercise of moderate intensity was associated with improved cognition, manifested by improved performance and increased P3 amplitude, a neuroelectric indicator that reflects the amount of attentional allocation in tasks requiring cognitive control. And then moving on to our mental health, instead of viewing our educator role to students as purely academic and focusing on training students to just regurgitate standardized information and test materials, our staff was trained to focus on the well-being of the whole student, including supporting their mental health, mindset, personality, individual talents and interests, as well as their emotional, social, physical, and academic strengths and needs. This approach works synergistically with the nutrition and movement initiatives to produce positive student and teacher outcomes across the board, both academically and behaviorally. Students are more likely to be intrinsically motivated to learn and participate when their mental health and mindset are supported. Recent research has demonstrated the importance of creating relationships within the whole school, including all staff, particularly where all students and staff were included and healthy socialization was supported. Participants specifically appreciated being able to speak to an administrator about what is really going on in the school, having specific time allocated for peer socialization and inclusive activities. Here are our goals based upon our SWOT analysis of our elementary school organization, and you can see the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats listed here. Based upon the SWOT analysis above, our leadership took action to create the following goals. The first goal, create an effective financial task force to solve the budget limitations and the high cost of healthy food and classroom supplies. Second, bolster stakeholder buy-in by constantly communicating and highlighting the exciting results of our holistic strategies and the other Pioneer Schools brain-based successes. Third, hone our focus onto the big three initiatives, micronutrients, movement, and the mental health mindset, in order to avoid spreading our effort and our resources too thin or scattered. Fourth, produce measurably significant student and staff educational outcomes across as many key performance indicators as possible. And fifth, monitor and report on several KPI, summative test results, student engagement, behavioral reports, student and staff attendance, and teacher turnover rate. Our leadership development plans. Teachers, paraprofessionals, and staff complete and fully engage with workshops, conferences, required trainings, modules, SEL training, PLCs, and their own self-study to become lifelong learners. And you can see our 4 broad categories here under classroom management, technology, required trainings, and soft skills. We will have strategies to keep students engaged training, how to differentiate for diverse learning needs, brain-based classroom practices and environments, effective behavioral management plans, cybersecurity training, Google Classroom training, IXL program training, Seesaw GimKit and Kahoot training, training on parent email protocols and templates, bloodborne pathogens, sexual harassment training, mandatory reporter training, emergency response, cultural competency and diversity, mentorship, conflict resolution, social emotional learning, leadership training, and time management and organizational skills. It's not difficult for teachers, admin, students, and all stakeholders to plainly see that there is a discrepancy between our current educational key performance indicators and where we would like to be. The need for improvements is obvious to many stakeholders. However, the bigger challenge is in convincing the stakeholders that the appropriate solution to the discrepancies is found in our holistic initiative approaches. Some have scoffed at the holistic principles and at the very idea that focusing on changing the food, greater access to movement, and meaningful mindset and mental health solutions could make such incredible impacts on learning and behavior. The holistic educational approach could be viewed by some as woo-woo, hippie, unscientific, countercultural, or just a passing fad. Therefore, it is paramount that both the internal respected leaders within the school and the external experts present a unified message of the exponential power of holistic strategies to positively change educational outcomes. It's also important to highlight several successful case studies of other pioneer schools who have achieved exciting results with the holistic initiatives based in neuroscience. This demonstrates that it is achievable and realistic, which boosts the self efficacy and the organizational efficacy. Efficacy refers to the belief that the change recipient and the organization can successfully implement a change. In other words, it boosts the confidence that says, we can do this. It's equally important to track, document, and present the positive changes in several key performance indicator statistics in order to validate and bolster support for the holistic strategies and initiatives. This will come in the form of several deliverable reports that will be used to celebrate our achievements and/or pick up on areas for improvement. Deliverables will include written and visual reports containing organized data for measurable student and staff outcomes that will be showcased in newsletters, documentation reports, and proudly displayed in school areas for all stakeholders to see and celebrate. This will include data such as student and staff attendance rates, benchmark testing, data per 6 weeks, teacher turnover rates, behavioral incident report data, measurable access to physical movement and mental health supports, student engagement, and survey data from parents, teachers, and students. As discussed later in our look to the next 3 years, specific actions are assigned to specific leadership teams with designated timelines for evaluation. For example, a review of Campaign 1, Micronutrients, is assigned to Leadership Team B and will be evaluated by the end of the first 30 days of the school year, each year, for the first 3 years. A review of the Campaign 2, Movement, will be assigned to Leadership Team A to be completed within the first 60 days of each school year. And Campaign 3, Mental Health, will be assigned to the counselors and assistant principals team to be evaluated at the end of the first 90 days of each school year. A full description of the specific change management actions and evaluations is featured in greater detail later in this presentation. Cultural competence and inclusivity. Cultural competence is particularly important when working in education because how we think and behave is so inherently linked to how we teach and learn. Cultural competence and inclusivity can be learned and improved, but it needs to be taught and practiced intentionally. All staff will complete a standard virtual inclusivity training, followed by attending an in-person training with guest speakers who can share relevant and compelling inclusivity stories that have come up in the educational workplace. Lastly, all staff will complete cultural competence and inclusivity guided exercises, such as identity maps to explore different facets of their own identities and those of others, reflecting on topics such as gender, race, economic class, age, political views, likes and dislikes, religious beliefs, neurodivergence, physical limitations or differing abilities, family status, career aspirations, hobbies, and more. All staff will role-play various cultural and inclusivity scenarios, practice active and reflective listening skills, and discuss de-escalation techniques for tensions with conflicting beliefs or worldviews, and learn practical steps to foster a welcoming and safe company culture for everyone. A letter from the principal. I am pleased to report that this year's holistic, brain-based educational initiatives have been a groundbreaking success on every level of measurement for our students and staff. Our team is excited to present and share the data points that prove our efforts have paid off as we look to the future with a strategic 3-year plan of success. Focusing our attention on the Triple M method of micronutrients, movement, and mental health helped to clarify and hone our attention to the areas which could deliver the most return on investment. This delivered positive results, most notably in student behavior, engagement, and academic performance. Several strategies exceeded expectations, while others highlighted areas requiring optimization. The insights outlined in this report are intended to support informed decision-making and continuous improvement in future educational planning so that we can continue to improve and succeed together. And as you can see, some of our featured KPI, positive 37% in student engagement, positive 36% improvement in student test scores, down 25% for behavioral referrals, and down 38% for student absences. A year in review, success and key performance indicators. We far exceeded the goals of the holistic brain-based campaign strategy during this reporting period, which were centered on producing measurably positive student and staff outcomes and key performance indicators such as improved grades, tests, attendance, behavioral reports, employee turnover, and increased access to micronutrients, movement, and mental health support. And just like we viewed on the last page, here are some of our important successful KPI. Down 38% in student absences, down 25% in behavioral issues, down 60% in teacher turnover, down 57% in employee absences. We've gained 300% improvement in access to movement. We've gained 37% in student engagement. We gained 35% in ELAR summative test scores and 36% in math summative test scores. The next 3 years will look to our future. First, we will have a greater focus and resources to the expert change agents who can be a powerful voice for our holistic brain-based solutions. Second, we will optimize the nutritious menu by reviewing the inventory and survey reports of the breakfast, lunch, and snack menus to highlight and keep the most popular healthy food options, while also considering the removal and replacement of the less popular food options in order to cut down on food waste and make room for alternatives. And third, the school will add a designated sensory calming room to create a safe, brain-based environment for all students and staff that will be fully stocked with emotional regulation tools, fidgets and sensory-friendly lighting, and access to supportive physical and mental activities that are supported by neuroscience. And as you can see in this chart here, we list the actions, who they're assigned to, and the timeline for evaluation. And here are our references. Thank you for listening to this presentation.